But first, some housekeeping. Today's webinar will be recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording by email in the next 24 hours. I believe we will also send out slides as well, so no need to take notes. And second, please use the Q&A tool in the webinar platform to ask questions. I'll respond to some questions in the chat as they're posted, and others I'll save until the end of the webinar for our presenters to address live. So let's meet our presenters. John, if you'll head over to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'm excited to introduce Veronika, Grozdanovska, and John Harrington. Veronika is the Chief Innovation Officer at Novotek AB. Throughout her career, Veronika has worked for international industrial companies in several senior and leadership roles, gaining broad experience in the areas of industrial automation, data management, and Industry 4.0. After an international career, Veronika recently returned to Sweden to join Novotek as Chief Innovation Officer, focusing on transformation journeys. Veronika is passionate about bringing people and cultures together alongside the digital journey. John is the Chief Product Officer at HighByte. He's responsible for product management, customer and partner success, and company strategy here at HighByte. John has spent his 25 career both delivering software to manufacturers and working for manufacturers in operations roles. This experience has given him a unique perspective on how suppliers and end users each play an integral role in implementing new technology solutions. Veronika, John, thank you for being here. This should be a great discussion, especially given your backgrounds and global perspective on how data strategy and analytics are evolving in our space. So Veronika, I'm going to turn it over to you. Will you kick it off for us?
Absolutely. Thank you for this introduction, and thank you everybody for joining today. I really look forward to these 45 minutes ahead of us. So working in a lot of factories after many, many years and meetings with different customers, I keep thinking about many things, but think about all the technology we're having in front of us and that has been developed for so many years. Think about all expertise that we have around different processes that we have in the manufacturing world today. And then yet, I still go around and think about how actually a day in the life of a person who is working in the manufacturing area today is not always so smooth and actually not so impressive. So that's why I keep always coming back from these meetings and thinking, imagine a future where we actually would have the same that we have at home when we are consumers. I mean, as consumers today, everybody, we are really used to get all the information served, right? We go and Google up things. I want to travel to Sweden, I put Sweden, and I get a lot of different interesting sources of information, right? And then it's up to me to really pick what I want to read. Then Corona showed us another thing. Not just we are getting the information served, but we are also getting the analytics served. So you don't even need to spend time in actually putting all this data together. Somebody's doing this for you. So I would say it's really an amazing, easy way of actually getting information. I think all of you agree, right? But then think about also what we are getting used to. It doesn't matter the age. I'm now actually a little bit older, of course, but looking at my younger kids, I mean, think about the whole workforce transformation that we have in front of us. I mean, everybody's doing everything like in a mobile environment, right? We are really getting into health data. We are talking to our doctors. We are taking a lot of the information from different sources. We are analyzing it, and it should be anything, anywhere, anytime. And then if you think about the young generation coming into the manufacturing world, they are actually used to grasp the information in a different way. They learn in a different way. And we are in a moment of time when we are having a lot of people with domain expertise, process knowledge, using a technology which is not always the most new one in the manufacturing world. And then we have the young people coming in, and we are just sitting there. The gap is getting bigger and bigger, right? So then imagine how it would be, sorry, I'm jumping ahead, all the same demands and wishes that we have every day. Imagine you go into your factory, into your manufacturing production, and you have everything there. exactly as you have it at home. No matter what role you have, no matter what department you work for, no matter where you are, site X, say site Y in that country or in this country, you can still say, hey, I want to check this. I want to actually take the best decision ever for my supply chain, and without actually spending a lot of time to really think about, is the data correct? Do I trust the data? Who put together the data? Did they do the right analytics for me? So it's really going into the life of how easy and good we could have it in that world, right? So this is pretty much what I think when I say imagine a future when we have it like that. Another thing which is coming so quickly to us, and now living in Sweden, it's every day around me, they're talking about sustainability. Every day they're talking about circular economy. And it's getting more and more interesting because we are soon getting a lot of fines in the manufacturing world if we don't produce in a way according to some laws and regulations. So now people go even further. We don't even talk anymore about analytics, about digital transformation. No, now we talk about circularity. So if you think about this page now, what you see in front of you, this slide, everything should be connected in a very collaborative way. We should talk to the customer feedback. We should actually design the products according to the feedback. We should think about the supply chain working in that way. And what is really the common driver here for everything to be in that perspective good? It's the data, right? And yet actually data is really something that we kind of neglect because we think about data we had for forever. We know everything about the data. But I still want to emphasize, no matter what people we have in this loop in front of us, no matter what good, right processes we have, if we don't have the data in the way we need it, it will be impossible going forward. So that's pretty much how I think about what future would be. And now bringing us back to actually what we have today in the reality and why is it like it is. I love this one. John created it a while ago, and I've been really walking you through it in many of my customer meetings. It's so easy to talk about Industry 4.0. Oh my God, we love to talk about it, right? And then you go back and you see, oh, Industry 3.0 was actually pretty straightforward. Oh, it was this stack and people understand it from the beginning to the end. And then when I put this in front of people and they're like, oh, it looks really, really, really very complex. Yes, it is. And then not just that it looks complex, all the ways the data needs to flow up and down, left and right, diagonal, it's absolutely amazing what's going on, right? And this is how it looks like. And then if you come back to why don't we have a smooth life in manufacturing today? Because we just probably still cannot come around how do we structure all that so it makes sense. So different meetings have generated different discussions, but I try to summarize it in a kind of data pane that we see. And I think for the people today, if you just take a moment after this call and think back, do you really see this in your place today? Do you have the data scientists really working with what they should do, or they are doing other stuff that actually is generated because we didn't fix the data in the beginning? Who is really managing the IT security? Where is really the operations data going? What are the people busy with in the different departments? Are they busy with answering questions? Give me some data to the cloud. That's a typical question, right? But what does that really mean? What are we actually consuming the time we spend together in order to really understand where are we really having the gaps in the communication? And then, of course, the cloud storage fees. I mean, I don't want to take away the moment of actually that we need to go in the cloud, but we don't want to have a situation when we actually end up with so much data in the cloud that in the end, somebody's going to stop it because they pay too much for it and we still don't know what we're using it for. So it's better to think ahead so we don't end up in that discussion. So I think here we would like to have this poll. I still think that's going on. And if you now, people
Veronika, yeah. I just launched it. So
yeah, perfect.
Now that you've explained it to everyone, hopefully we'll get some respondents here. See what other people are thinking are the priorities or the pains
exactly
they're struggling with. we'll give them a few more minutes to get back to us. I can tell you that, of the many calls that I'm on, I hear the data interoperability issues. That comes in loud and clear. I also hear the OT team being backlogged, never having time to respond, being frustrated by all the requests for, hey, can you help us out, get us this information? And they just think, I've got all my other job that I have to do, like running this factory, and the last thing I want to do is worry about other people's data needs. And then that data science one, we also hear that a lot. They're just not spending enough time analyzing data and spending far too much time trying to find it and understand it, right? Those are definitely the two that I hear the most.
I agree, John. I think even that 50% number might even be conservative. From what we hear, it could be up to 80%, and there seem to be some industry analysts supporting that idea. So very time consuming.
I'm going to end the poll. We've got a bunch of people, and I'm going to share the results because I think it's fascinating. I think people can see them now. Yeah. It's fascinating that it's actually pretty spread out. It's there's certainly some higher than lower, but it's pretty spread out. And the cloud fees are interesting because I'm starting to hear that more and more. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago, people went to the cloud to save money. They're concerned about the cloud for security. Now they're finding that the security in the cloud is in some ways even higher than they can have in their own facility, but the costs are increasing. And how do they handle that? And a big piece of that is making sure that they're using it most effectively. But why don't I stop sharing? You can keep going.
Super. So I think actually the absolutely last thing here was really a conclusion that I've been kind of walking around all the time here thinking, and that's actually the whole goal with also coming to this call and interview together. It's really like, is really the data strategy the missing piece in this whole digital transformation journey? And I would say when I ask people around me this question, I think more and more often you hear yes. Even if we all want to talk about the other new buzzwords, I think still coming back to the basics, like a data strategy is necessary. So I think the last one, what I wanted really before we go into the journey, it's all about data, yes, but honestly, it's all about also the journey, how to get to that data strategy. That should not be underestimated, how much really it will help and how much really we need to really think through things before. So John, now over to you. I think you have all these secrets that we will hear about how to get there together.
Good stuff. Let me see if I can take back control. Thank you, Veronika. Yeah, fascinating. I agree. One comment that you made that really rings true for me is when you started on the sustainability slide. It's not about the analytics. It's not about IoT. It's about the business problem, and it's about sustainability. And that's something that we're also hearing more and more in the industry. And I think it's an evolution that we're seeing. So I'm going to talk about how do we solve these problems? How do we solve this data strategy problem? And really, there's this new concept of DataOps. Well, I call it new. It's new to the industrial world. It's been in the IT world for 5 to 10 years now. Companies like Hitachi and IBM and others really kind of pioneered it about 10 years ago. But the key is that it's not a technology as much as it's a responsibility, and it really owns the data strategy, right? It is the data strategy. So DataOps, it's not, like I said, it's not just the technology. It's a series of processes. It's a series of people and technology all together. On the process side, concepts that have been around in IT for a while, but were not widely used on the OT side were things like data contracts between different teams and different systems, data governance, semantic data definitions, architectures. On the people side, we're hearing about people like information architects and data engineers and system architects. So much more architectural view on this. but it's also including the line of business. So the big trend that we're seeing now is it's not just OT and IT, it's OT, IT, digital, and line of business, because ultimately all of these systems are being put in place to support the line of business, to support driving product through the factory faster and more efficiently, with higher quality, with better product design, with better supply chain. And all of that comes together by bringing in the line of business to identify the challenges in what we need to do. And then on the technology side, of course, the factory starts at the edge. It starts at the machine, and it needs to work its way up. It's using some new concepts like unified namespace, and we'll talk about that briefly a little later, but using data models and open standards and integration hubs so that we can effectively move data throughout our systems securely and efficiently to deliver on, what Veronika was talking about around getting access to information easily and with the devices and the systems that we need access on. So one thing that HighByte has developed is this 7-step guide for implementing industrial data ops. And we've done this over the last 3 years of implementing industrial data ops in many different manufacturing environments, and really trying to hone in on, well, what does it take to get started and to get moving? So I'm going to walk through and I'm going to pick on a few of the key steps, and we're going to do some deep dives on them. So first thing to walk through the steps, start with the use case. It all starts with the use case, and it all starts with a business-driven use case. Then we identify the target system. What do we want to use this data in? Then we think about, well, where can we get the data from? And then what does the architecture look like to deliver that, to move that across our network and to get it into the target system that we need? Of course, security is critical. We need to secure the systems. We need to secure the networks. We need to secure the data. And then data models and data structures are critical to the deployment and the efficient moving of information. And finally, it's the execution. It's flowing of the data. It's delivering of the data from the sources to the targets, however it may be. All different types of data. Could be highly structured information coming from PLC, could be highly unstructured imagery coming from a camera. All of it, we need to flow that data and manage it and maintain those flows over time. Actually, so now I'm going to jump into some of these steps and go a little bit deeper. So the first one is the use case, and I think that everything hangs off the use case. Everything hangs off defining a specific, measurable business problem that we can solve with the use case. And I say that because too many projects that I've heard about started with a use case being move data to the cloud, move our industrial data to the cloud. And then they go to the OT team, and the OT team says, okay, well, I've got 1 million data tags and I can collect them as fast as you want. What do you want? And that's where things get bogged down. And so we always tell people, let's start with the use case. What are we trying to solve for? Are we trying to solve for predictive maintenance? Are we trying to solve for improving quality or improving yield of the line? Are we trying to solve for measurement of the line? All these different use cases, but you got to select the use case. The use case in many cases should be business focused, though sometimes it's technical. Sometimes it's, I need to manage and be able to manage and maintain all these data integrations much more efficiently, in which case it may be a technical problem. But in many cases, it's I need to get data to these people who don't have access to it today, or getting a report once a week, and now I want real-time information across our enterprise to them.
So John, a question here now, which I kind of hear a lot from my customers when we talk about this first step is so important, but who would you say are really the people who should be involved in this process? Because you don't want to have it too big with involving too many people in this kind of brainstorming session. Right. Then it can go on for 1 year, but you also want to have the real I don't know how to say it. Is it the ones who are responsible for the end results, or how do you see it?
Yeah, well, it's funny because we see this evolving and we see it varying from one company to the next, because I think companies are still trying to figure out the whole OT, IT, how do those two teams work together? Is there a digital team? Does it, how is that involved? But what we think is critical is, number one, the use case owner. So often it's the line of business. So maybe it's a quality engineer saying, I need access to line data at a higher resolution in real time so that I can respond to defects coming off the line. And I know that they're happening and I can look at what's going on. So line of business, number one. Certainly the IT folks, because they're the ones that are often supporting the line of business with systems and with networks and need to be involved in moving that data. And a lot of the projects are moving data to the cloud, and they're the ones that are hosting and supporting that. Okay. Of course, if the source data is coming from the OT domain, we need them involved too. The OT team understands the data. Like I said, a typical manufacturing environment could have millions of data tags, and they could have thousands of temperature values or pressure values. And the quality engineer just needs to know what was the temperature and the pressure when this part was being produced. Well, you need someone who can identify which one to use. And that really comes down to the OT team, who has deep domain knowledge of the factory to be able to add that together. And then in some cases, we include digital if there's a digital team who's kind of coordinating all these. In some cases, it's handled by the OT and the IT. But we definitely see this as a cross-functional team. And it's really a tiger team. It doesn't need to be massive. And it needs to focus on delivering a specific problem, not boiling the ocean.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks.
John, is it fair to say that most of the teams we see are like 6 to 8 people, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller?
Yes, I think when it gets larger, it becomes a challenge to get decisions made. And you seem to always be waiting for people to join the call or waiting for people to come up to speed. So kind of that 3 to 6 people is a good number that you can really make progress with them.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention here is this diagram on the right, or this picture on the right. We've actually developed what we call our use case designer spreadsheet that we share with our customers as a way of identifying what is the use case, who are the key team members, what are the target systems, source systems, miles. So it's something that you fill out as you go through. And just by putting it down in a spreadsheet, it allows everyone to really be baselined in exactly what we're doing, what the problems are, what we're trying to solve, and how we're going to do it. So we've developed this over time with a number of different customers. Now, when we think about common use cases, it really runs the gamut. So we see things from, we need production metrics like OEE or SPC, and in some cases, we want to be able to analyze these production metrics across our enterprise, so different lines at different plants. People are looking at just dashboard in the cloud, get access to what's going on across plants or even within a plant. People doing predictive asset maintenance or quality or batch reporting or traceability. As Veronika, you had commented on sustainability. So there's lots of different use cases. Sometimes it's just getting access to information so that they can make better decisions.
Exactly.
But let me go back. I want to launch that next poll. So our question for you is, what do you, as the attendees of this webinar, what do you see as the key use cases that you're trying to solve in the projects that you're working on today? And we'll give that a little bit of time. Veronika, are there any key use cases that you tend to hear about or see more frequently than others?
Yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of discussions now about predictive maintenance for some of the markets. That one, I kind of almost think is an easy way to say, but it's not an easy one to do. if I may put it like that, because even here, when people say predictive maintenance, we have a lot of data, but what people miss out is like, you need to have a lot of data in order to build an algorithm so you can really do some analysis on it, right? And that's also becoming the kind of the showstopper in many cases. And also the data that you think you have is maybe not even the right data to measure the right things so you can do your predictive maintenance. So it's not an easy use case. Even if a lot of people are talking about it, I feel it's not so easy to apply. But then simple things, like you said, I mean, just a dashboard, you still go walk factories and you still see Post-it notes and Excel. So it's just a dashboard to make it visible, one truth across the whole enterprise, right? That's really quite impactful thing.
Yes.
And people still underestimate that it's not that simple to execute many times. So
agree 100%. In fact, I'll end the poll, I'll share the results, and I think people agreed with you, right? Simple dashboards, metrics, simple, statistical based metrics or production based metrics, no complex AI predictive anything are the top two. The predictive maintenance is number 3. I am starting to hear more quality and process optimization and people trying to push the analytics to optimize for a line, for instance, and that analytical problem is much harder than a single asset, or certainly a single metric. But people are starting to get there, and they're starting to talk about it, at least right now. But I think I would agree 100% with the results in what you said. Some basic metrics, some simple dashboarding, and then the predictive maintenance are where we're seeing a lot of the activity. Great. I'll continue on. So I'm not going to go through every single step. I'm going to pick out a few key steps here. So next step I want to talk about is architectures, because we're seeing some key innovation here. So, the single biggest thing I believe impacting all this technology today is the cloud, right? A lot of people are trying to figure out how they can leverage the cloud, how we can more effectively move data into the cloud. What can we run in the cloud? What can we run smoother in the cloud? Of course, there's also conversation about the edge, but the big activity today is definitely the cloud, and how do we get data into data lakes in the cloud so that we can more effectively utilize it. So that's definitely a key architecture that we're seeing, and how do we move it up there with meaning, right? Another key area architecture that we're seeing is, instead of these point-to-point connections that you had shown on that slide a while back, where every system was connected to every other system, is how do we implement a data hub, right? We just need to move data from our process control system into a database for this team to start looking at. It may be all on-prem, it may not be, but I just want to move the data and I need to transform it or set it up as it goes into that system. And then there's other connections. We're hearing more and more people want to pull data out of an ERP system and make that available to some of the operators, or make it available to some of the OT team, and pull some information out of the MES and make it available to the supply chain team. So lots of different use cases there around a data hub, just moving point to point, or discrete connections on one side and on the other, but managing all of that in a central system. And the last architecture that we hear about a lot is unified namespace. And this is a really new architecture that we've seen come about in the last 3 or 4 years, where people are leveraging the potential of an MQTT broker, which allows you to publish massive amounts of information into a broker, and then you really democratize the data, because you allow others to subscribe to whatever data they want. And so people can go in and they can select, I want to subscribe to the schedule information today, and maybe tomorrow I'll subscribe to some metrics, and then the day after I'll subscribe to my asset maintenance information. But they can subscribe to these different levels, and then they can get updates whenever that data changes. So it really democratizes that data and gives access to it. So we're seeing all three of these architectures playing out in industry today. Some companies are certainly more cloud-based, some are more unified namespace focused, but we also see a combination of them. So pretty easy to kind of link them up together, and maybe you're doing both. Maybe the unified namespace is for the OT team and the cloud is for the line of business in the IT team.
So thinking now a little bit about how it can look like in the real world. I mean, you're listening a lot of people now is talking about, we need to scale. We need to have something that is easy to maintain. And this is probably, I think, the step which is super important for these two things, right? Because if you kind of don't make the integration architecture looking good from the beginning, then you have no chance to do the scaling and easy to maintain, right? But now comes my kind of how to think to how do you start this? I mean, it's really, it sounds easy when you see it like this, and it's a little bit like, this is the point when you all need to talk the same data language across the whole life cycle of the project, right? So right. How do you really start this particular step in order to make it like efficient for people involved? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the key is that people start out with what are the overarching goals of data in the company, and is it, some companies are very focused on how do we democratize the data and allow anyone to subscribe to any information. A lot of companies right now are, let's put all the data into a data lake and then we'll provide access to it. So in some cases, these architecture discussions, none of them are wrong, but the key is to select them and to get going. And, the data hub, one area that we're seeing is like microservices, and on your phone, just to explain what a microservice is, on your phone, in the old days we would have an ERP system, it would run our entire company, right? But now you have a phone and you may have 20, 50, 100 applications on it. So think of each one of those applications as a micro app, and each one does one use case. And so what we're seeing is analytics and dashboarding can become microservices or micro apps. And then how do we deliver the data to all of those? And so part of it is going down a path, selecting an approach. Part of it is recognition that getting started is more important than, because none of these approaches are you're locked in forever. And that's one of the big powers of technology today, is that it's not like implementing an ERP system 20 years ago, where you needed to get the architecture and the models 100% correct on day one, or else you're stuck with it. Implementing technology today it's very flexible, and like I said, you can do a hybrid of these different approaches, and people are doing a hybrid, and that's really what we're seeing. Is it's about having the capability to do a hybrid by having different layers of abstraction throughout your enterprise.
Okay.
John, I'm going to pause you here just for a second. I know we were going to do questions at the end, but you're perfectly on the architecture slide. When you're looking at the data hub, would you say that that's the one that's used by SESME? I know there's a lot of organizations out there. SESME is one of them. Can you just comment on that? There was a question in the Q&A.
Yeah, so we have had a number of discussions with the team at SESME. They do have, so maybe they have a data hub in the cloud, is their approach. And what they're really focused on is defining a set of models that machine builders and companies like us can use to drive model data into the cloud. And they do have a data hub in the cloud where people can get access to that data. And they've even got some dashboarding capabilities to visualize that data and analyze it. So it's kind of a hybrid. And we've had some discussions with them about, you still need to get all that data into the cloud, into their cloud architecture. So HighByte can be kind of a key piece to doing that. But yeah, Sesame is taking an interesting approach of putting that data hub in the cloud so that people can log in. It's I think of it more as like an IoT platform. Rather than when I think of a data hub, it's kind of moving the data as opposed to consuming the data and then making it accessible. Thanks, Tori. The next step that I wanted to talk about is modeling data. And modeling data is critical for all of this to be successful in order to solve these use cases. And it goes back to the fact that industrial data in many cases is hard to use. It's almost encoded information in PLCs and in different applications. And the key to using it is understanding what different bits and pieces go together to solve this problem. And so when we try to get access to this data, we end up with, well, we have 1 million data points. How do we use it? And what we really need to do is consolidate that. But the first thing that we need to do is define how we're going to organize our data. So, I talked about a unified namespace. I talked about a cloud data lake. With all of this data, you can't just push it all up there and expect people to understand it. So what we've been recommending to our customers is the ISA 95 came out with a hierarchy of how they think about a company. And it starts with the site or the company, then the site, then the area, then the line, then the cell. And I often will even throw in an asset on the bottom there. And the key is that there are different use cases or different sets of data that apply at different levels. For instance, you may want to look at profit and loss at the site or the area level, or maybe the schedule at the site or area level. The line, you may want to look at OEE, and then down at the cell level is where you get the fine granularity of information to get access to things like compliance or quality or batch reports. And then, of course, if you're doing predictive asset maintenance, you're at the asset level. So the key is that you need to organize your data because you can't just push everything up there. Once you define how you're going to organize things in your unified namespace or in your data lake or wherever it's going, the next key piece is to create data structures. And this is really the model, if you will. But since we're not creating the entire company on down, our data structures tend to be discrete sets of information that I can work with, that you can work with to solve a use case, right? It keeps going back to this use case concept. Define the data structure that you need in order to answer that use case. The data that can all be collected at a specific time or in a specific event, and you can standardize it with your metrics and whatnot, and contextualize it. And that's another key piece, because as we move from connecting into a PLC to find out what's going on there to now I'm merging all this data across multiple PLCs, multiple work cells, multiple lines, multiple sites, I need to add context to this data. So I need to know this is the information, for instance, what factory it's from, what line it's from, what's going on in the machine, some of the key metrics that I'm looking for. This is more of a pharma type example, temperature values, different measurements that I'm taking off of instruments. And you pull all that data together into a single payload that's really focused on solving this problem. So we see modeling as being critical to solving the use case where you're really aggregating the data together. Sesame is a great example of a company. They're actually working with the OPC Foundation and defining semantic data definitions. So they're defining a lot of these models and trying to get industry to use them. And they're really focused in parts of the industry, a lot in manufacturing. We also are seeing in other types of industries, oil and gas and building automation, things like that. Other industry groups are trying to define or are defining other semantic data models and data definitions. The whole goal is to make this data easy to assemble and to standardize so that people can use it much more efficiently.
So if I understand this correct, is like this step is absolutely key from the point of view that if we need to kind of replace an equipment, or we need to change a program, we need to add some new information, new users, when you have this model data, it can really be smooth done, right? So because all information is there already done, right?
Yes, it's all aggregated. So, early on we had talked about some of the challenges of utilizing industrial data, and one of them that comes up is the data scientists are spending a ton of time trying to find and pull together the right data. This is all about very much solving that problem, especially where we're going to put it all together for them. We define the data structure and then we automate it. But yeah, it's very much pull the data that's all related to solve a specific use case together, create a model for it, and then replicate that model. It also allows you to apply the same analytic or the same dashboard or the same metric across multiple lines or across multiple sites, because now you're standardizing the data going in.
Okay. Good.
The last piece and the last step is about flowing the data. And so I think of this as the execution phase. And this really does get into technology, and this is where HighByte comes into play. Our solution, the HighByte Intelligence Hub, is designed 100% to solve these problems for data ops, for flowing that data, moving that data. Some people refer to it as data pipelines, creating those pipelines. And we do that by establishing a data hub that's abstracted from the source and the target data, making connections to any different system that you need, connections to whether it's a machine data, transactional data, time series data, unstructured like imagery or audio information, any types of data sources, ingest that data, standardize it, contextualize it, because we've got that modeling engine at the core. So we create models at the core of the solution, and you use those to standardize, contextualize the data, and then you flow it out. And the flows are the critical piece. That's where you actually move it. And that's where you also manage it. So any connections that are lost or data pipelines that are broken, you can go in and fix it, because now instead of having custom code everywhere, you've now got an application that you can see what's going on, you can manage it, you can maintain it. And that becomes the final step of implementing a use case. And of course, then you just loop back up to the top and start your next use case. So I guess I'll finish by saying, from our perspective, data strategy is really the heart of Industry 4.0. It's the heart of data ops. It's pulling, it drives the data ops deployment, and data ops is deployed by using a process. And we've defined this 7-step process to implementing this, and it's creating one use case at a time. And once you get to the bottom, coming back up to the top and working on the next one, and prioritizing those and just picking them off. And that we've seen companies much more successful when they start with a use case rather than saying, we need to just move all the data and we'll figure it out later. That we've seen that fail time and time again, and heard many people struggle with that. The key is to start with a use case and then expand it over time. With that, I think we have another poll. Let me launch this poll. So the question that we're asking is, what stage do you think your company's at in this data ops journey? Are you still investigating? Have you assembled a team? Do you have some use cases that you're working on? Are you looking at the architecture and thinking about some of the different architectures that are out there? Or have you already implemented? Do you have some use cases implemented in a site or even across your enterprise? We'll let this collect for a few more minutes or a few more seconds, I guess, and then we'll close it and wrap things up. One thing that we didn't talk about, Veronika, was security. Security is definitely critical. We see it time and again as a key piece that people are thinking about. There's a lot of different, that also impacts the architectures because, you know, a lot of times people have their controls network is separated by firewalls and DMZs from the business network and doesn't have access to the cloud. And so coming up with architectures where you can federate information from one network to another and then add additional context to it or additional information to it and really assemble that packet of data as it moves through the networks. And then so that when it lands in the cloud, it's exactly what you want. Definitely critical, lots of different technology and different protocols and benefits to using one protocol over another. The only thing that we would always recommend is that you definitely keep data secure, definitely keep systems secure, and make sure that you know who's getting into what different systems.
That's really absolutely correct. And Veronika, coming from the people perspective here, I can tell you the question is getting even more interesting because I've been in many meetings when the customers are actually debating where is the security topic, where should it be, who is actually managing that, is it OT or IT? So even there we have a very interesting topic to solve in many cases, because both departments are equally responsible, right, in one way or the other, coming with the huge competence and expertise. But when you need to merge this, it's starting to be a little bit like, okay, so who's really driving that, right?
Right. Agree. And we certainly hear, I think IT, from my experience, the majority of customers, IT is definitely driving the security standpoint, though OT is definitely a critical member of the team. So interesting results from the DataOps journey. Definitely a lot more people on the researching and planning stage. And then, you know, a few people have deployed various stages, but most people are definitely on that early stage. So that's exciting. That's exciting for all of us. Feel free to, you know, reach out to us. And, you know, we can certainly help you out there. Next slide.
I think being cautious about time, we will send this recording out, right, Tori? So people will get
Correct.
all these questions. But I'm happy to actually just wrap up with saying, because you are still in the researching and planning phase, if you end up reading these questions, if you have them, this is really what we would like then to actually come to the next slide, which is really offer you to come to talk to us, to get a DataOps demo, discuss a use case, go through a data maturity assessment with us, because it's so important to understand where you are on this whole data journey. And then really in the end, when we say about digital transformation workshop, it's nothing complicated more than really discussing, brainstorming around potential use cases. So this is pretty much what we would like to kind of suggest and advise, that we would love to engage with you after this meeting today. But over to you, Tori, maybe we have some more questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. You both did an excellent job, and I love the back and forth dialogue. This was a great discussion. I wanted to add to this that yes, we will send out the presentation, we'll send out the slides, and I'm also going to send out the full 7-step guide. I know today that, you know, John really touched on a few steps, 1, 4, 7. obviously there's some spaces in between there. So we'll send you out the full guide that goes into each one of these steps in more detail. But of course, like John mentioned and Veronika as well, feel free to reach out to us as a resource as you get started and start to move, out of research and planning and thinking more about execution. So I do have one question. I know we're over, but there are a number of people still on. There's a question around Node-RED. And John, I never want to put words in your mouth, but I have a hunch that scalability might come up here. So why has Node-RED not gained momentum? Even though it's very compatible and powerful with a lot of PCs, protocols, et cetera. What are your thoughts about this tool?
Yeah, it's a good question. Node-RED is interesting. I've used it myself. It's a great tool for prototyping in my eyes. It allows you to very quickly and easily kind of work with the data and check out what's going on and stage it through lots of different steps and then push it out. Where we hear about it not doing well is when companies then want to scale, right? So you want to scale it up. You want to have, like I said, there's 1 million data points or 100,000 data points, and with Node-RED, it makes it hard to scale. You end up with lots of blocks, and that's one of the challenges with a lot of these visual options is that you end up with lots of blocks for each data point or each data set, and it's very hard to manage and maintain and scale. And there are some companies that are trying to make that easier. I think there's a comment about Libra, and I think that's one of them that is trying to look at how we can make it more scalable. But where we've been successful here at HighByte is people that have done some prototyping with Node-RED, but then want to move into a more scalable solution, and they want to also scale it not just within one location, but across multiple sites and manage all of that and govern all of that data and structure it and secure it. HighByte provides a really useful solution for that. So I think Node-RED provides a lot of flexibility, but it's one level up from programming it. It makes it really fast to prototype, but a lot of people struggle on the scale out.
That's great.
And
Thanks,
happy
John.
to whoever was asking that question, happy to take that offline and have more discussions with them if they're interested. Anything else?
Great.
I know that we're over.
No, and I did respond to a number of those questions by chat, and certainly we can follow up on some more of those as well if you'd like to go into greater detail. But I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. And again, we'll send out the resources within 24 hours. John, Veronika, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tori. Thank you, Veronika.
Thanks, John.
Great conversation. Hope to do this again.
Absolutely.
All right.
Super. Ciao. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye.